normal people become terrified of criminals.
Shots were just fired. Police just came out and told us, and we're headed there right now.
They become terrified of their own government.
In an email released from the House Oversight Committee on Wednesday, a Bank Secrecy Act manager raised concerns the payments did not appear to correspond to any services rendered, as well as Chinese efforts to target children of politicians. The investigator suggested the bank reevaluate its relationship with the client. So you had private sector concerns that homeboy over here was taking dirty money from foreign governments. Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, with new UFO news breaking as we speak. How about that? I want to explain something to everybody. How money in finance works. You know, they talk about Donald Trump hiring his family and his kids and all that stuff, and I'm like, yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. If you own a business, and let's say you own a car dealership, you're pulling in $1 million a month. That's like a good amount for a car dealership. Now, I'm not saying profit. That's your revenue. And so let's say you got a good profit margin. You think, I'm going to hire my son and I'm going to pay him 6 figures. Good luck. You need a clearly defined job, a job title, a legitimate job title, a recognizable job title with clearly defined hours and structure. Because what's going to happen is government's going to come for you and say, what does your son do? Why are you giving your son this salary? We have questions. Why? Let's say you as an individual make $1 million a year. You're in the highest tax bracket possible. So you're giving like half of your paycheck to the government. Let's say you get a paycheck for $10,000, cut that in half, give the government $5,000. That's how it works. Let's say you decide to hire your son and pay him $5,000 a month. Well, now you've cut your cash in half. For your $5,000, you're still cutting that in half. Now the government's only getting 25. Your son, who only makes 100, is in a lower tax bracket. Now the government's not getting that 5,000 they thought every month. They're getting only like 35 or 4. This is why you cannot just give money to your family and your kids unless you have outlined clearly in the documents, in your corporate paperwork and all of that stuff. It is not, I don't want to act like it's a difficult thing. I'm just saying, if there's no clear services rendered, it is not surprising that the bank staff guy was like, we should reevaluate working with this guy, because that clearly is going to put them in, like, this bank is probably like, they're going to file discovery on us. We're going to get investigated. Mm-hmm. This guy's clearly got illegitimate dealings going on. We can clearly see it.
Well,
so
he's required to
right.
look for that.
Exactly.
Under federal law. There's all sorts, this is this huge thing.
And this is exactly why. So it is not so easy in business just to have money and give money away. First of all, you can't give money away. There's limits. There's there's gift limits per year plus lifetime gift limits. If you hire family members and they don't have clearly defined titles that are recognizable and they're not being paid a market competitive salary, they are going to come after you. It's wild. Look, you start a business and all of a sudden you're a Republican. That's what they say, right? And the reason why these Democrats don't understand, they think it's because of taxes. I'm like, it's not just that. It's like you might want to pay someone a premium, and now you've got to argue why you're paying someone a premium. Oh, this guy's really, really good at his job. He should get paid more. And then they're like, you're paying him 40% above market. Why? We want to know why that money is going to him and not to us. And that's the kind of stuff they could go after you whenever they feel like it.
Like, I don't want to do the whole, conservative, imagine if the shoe was on the other foot thing. But I should point out that Donald Trump is currently on trial for fraud in New York State. And none of the banks filed any reports like this whatsoever.
No, they're defending him.
Yeah, didn't Deutsche Bank just come out and say like this was normal?
In fact, it's been the exact opposite, and they
all
defended
got paid back perfectly well
because they paid back with profit, and that's why the banks were willing to continue to do this. And yet we have another situation here where the banks were raising red flags, were filing potential fraud reports, and nothing seems to happen.
Well, they're not supposed to be mad about the Bidens. You're only supposed to be mad about the Trumps. The Bidens are allowed to do whatever they want.
This is the three-tier system of justice.
Yeah.
Right. And I heard you quote this the other day, that it's the 3 tiers, and I keep saying this over and over. So it used to be 2, now it's 3. Right. So tier 1, that's the elites. That's Hillary. That's if your last name is Obama, Clinton, Biden, Epstein at one point. You are fine, right? And well, until you're a loose end, like right. Chauvin, for example, he's a loose end, so got to get rid of him. So
he was never in their club.
That's no.
Yeah,
but I just mean loose ends. that's tier 1. You can do whatever you want for the most part. Then tier 2. So tier 2, this is like normal, you get pulled over for speeding, that kind of thing. That's your normie kind of law. That's your normal stuff. And then tier 3 is Trump and Trump supporters. And Trump supporters have a whole extra set of laws that, maybe you were just walking through the Capitol on your way out of the Capitol.
That means you get beat over the head.
You get beat in the back with a baton by the police, even as you're complying with their orders.
Or how about you're a married couple who shows up an hour and a half after people were already leaving. You have no idea what's going on. There's no signs, there's no cops, there's no barriers. You walk up and look around and then leave, and they accuse you of all of the same crimes and sentence you to a year in jail. That happened. I met some of these people. I met them at a restaurant, and they said hour and a half after people had already left and all that was done, they walk up and there's the building, doors open, no barricades, no signs, nothing. They're not anywhere near any of the fighting or broken glass, and they walk up and they're looking around and they wave and then they say, okay, whatever, and then they leave. And then next thing they know, 6-7 months later, they're getting served for criminal charges for having just walked around in D.C.
Shout out to Owen Schroyer, who's currently behind bars, who didn't even go into the Capitol
and was at a permitted rally. But doesn't matter.
But they just brought up all of his posts. This is what they're saying. You think the wrong thing, you say the wrong thing, you're in trouble, and we want you to be behind bars.
But I want to stress, in the 3 tiers of justice, a slight correction. The first tier is, as you described, but the second tier is you own a bodega and a guy comes in and smashes everything and the cops don't show up for any reason. So that means you're in this no man's land. The laws aren't enforced against you and they won't be enforced for you. Then you have the bottom tier of being the Trump supporters and the MAGA people, where you could be swatted 15 times in a year. Ain't nobody going to help you.
Nope.
And you fart in public and they're going to lock you up.
Yes. This is so in the Russian Civil War during the Bolshevik Revolution, when the Bolsheviks first got in power, the idea was, and Libby, we were chatting on this before we got here, and if you read Always with Honor by Pyotr Wrangel, who was the general that fought against the communists, I actually got to visit his grave in Belgrade a couple of weeks ago. It's just amazing. And it's right in this little alcove in a church, and it's not marked or anything before you go into the church, but everybody knows that that's General Wrangel. And his estate is completely refused, even now after the fall of the Soviet Union, to have his body transferred back to Russia, because that's where he wanted to go, because that church specifically is dedicated to the Russian imperial family, the Romanovs.
Oh, wow.
And that's from his perspective, he was fighting for the rightful rulers of the country and as a patriot. And so he said in this memoir that at one point that if you were a criminal who was caught with a knife, well, the criminal doesn't know any better. He's responding to socioeconomic factors that are out of his control. It's not his fault that he's lashing out this way. Society has wronged him. We must take care of him. We must help him and put him back on the street. But if you get caught with a knife, if you get caught with one, even if you haven't used it yet, now you're a criminal. Now you're a domestic terrorist, and you must be treated as an enemy of the state. So 100 years ago in Russia, this is exactly what they were doing.
Yeah. And also, because I've been looking at the Gulag Archipelago, which I know a lot of people have been talking about lately. But Solzhenitsyn talks about when he was in prison at the Lubyanka, which I don't know how you spell that, but whatever. When he was in prison and he was being interrogated and everything.
You spell it in Russian, by the way.
You spell it in Russian. Yeah. I would never do that, right?
Cyrillic.
But he talked about how people would come in and they would be interrogated and they would mention a former colleague who maybe they had been friendly with. And then the next thing they know, that former colleague is getting dragged in and being interrogated. And it's just this perpetual guilt by association, even though there hasn't been any guilt at any point. Solzhenitsyn was dragged in while he was serving in the military, and he was dragged in for, crimes. And it turned out that his biggest crime was that he had an old friend who was on the front lines of the opposing side, and they were sending each other letters. They were still friendly.
He was communicating with the enemy.
Right.
Do you think awareness of the multi-tier justice system is strong enough to affect how people are going to vote? Do you think that people who are on the fence have seen what's happened to the people involved in January 6th and will say,
I hope so.
No, January 6th.
I hope so, but do you think?
It's not January 6th. It's that a bodega worker got stabbed, or they were trying to kill him and he stabbed a guy and they lock him up. That there was a family, this was a big story. Looters came in and just destroyed everything for no reason, and the family's life and savings were wiped out. They lost 20 grand in product. Regular people are experiencing that. Anarcho-tyranny.
Yeah. Or like when you go to the store and you can't buy anything without searching around for someone to unlock a cabinet and there's nobody working and it's just a self-checkout. And everyone's just getting high in the back.
My favorite is in Chicago, the Walgreens where there's no products.
It's just little signs.
No, it's no. It's a big empty room with a terminal, and you walk up and type in what you want, and then after you pay, someone will walk out and carry the product to you.
Interesting.
Yeah, crazy.
You know, that's sort of like how grocery stores used to be.
Actually,
my great-grandfather had a grocery store in Brooklyn, and it would be like he would be behind the counter, and my great-grandmother, and people would come in and say what they wanted, and they would bring them the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what that is? That's a form of rationing.
Yeah.
That's actually a form of rationing.
It sure is.
It's not just against shoplifting. That's if Soviet Union Tanya Tay will tell me that she remembers not from when she was like a little older, but when she was younger, that if you wanted to go to the store, that you had to get your ration stamps, and then you went to the store and you waited in line and you waited and you waited and you waited and you kept waiting. And then eventually, if you had the specific stamp for, as you say, the item that you were looking for, then you handed it to the worker, then they would go into the back, then they would get it, then they would bring it out. Because people don't understand that in Eastern Europe, in Russia, in Belarus, Ukraine, after the fall of the Soviet Union, it was a complete wild, wild west free-for-all for almost a complete decade.
Yeah.
And crime and like actual highway robbers, like we say highway robbery, but like actual highway bandits, that was a huge thing. You would get some of that stuff, and some people would gang up on you right on the outside. So you had to go remember, so when society collapses and you are inside of it, all sorts of horrible things happen. I remember covering the Freddie Gray riots, and it was like everybody knew that at a certain time, like it's all just going to go away.
Have you ever had the Eastern European wafer cake?
Which kind? Oh, like the one, like the full cake, the layers.
So it's wafer.
Yeah, all the time.
Sweet condensed milk, layer, sweet condensed milk. And when I was in Ukraine, they told me, well, what happened was they had no flour. You have nothing. So what do? When your guests are going to come over, you boil in condensed milk, and then you put a thin wafer, you pour some on it, you put another wafer on top, you pour another layer, and that's how you make cake to have, but it's literally just condensed milk.
Yeah, Tanya's mom makes that for special occasions. It's really good.
Yeah, I know.
It's like all sugar.
But it's interesting. It's like something for special occasions that was an adaptation to the times that they were in, right? I mean, I think about how many
Kissinger died.
Yeah.
Whoa!
It just passed in the chat here. So.
Really?
He didn't pass in the chat, but they just mentioned it. So
he was in our chat when he died.
I'm sorry, Hannah Claire. I should have interrupted you.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.